Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Leonardo and this time I'm continuing talking about Duviri. Now in my previous video about Duviri, I talked about the quest, and the quest is really good. I was surprised how good the quest was and how it kind of solved most of the problems that Eternalism presented, and it kind of closed the arc on the Drifter, and even it kind of closed the arc on the 10-year game that Warframe is. Kind of. I'll put the link down below in the description so you can watch it if you want to. But now I'm going to talk about Duviri, the gameplay itself, the combat, the mechanics and all that. And right now, just so you know, it's not particularly good. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about Duviri, what it is right now. Now Duviri has 3 game modes. From right to left, we have the lone story, where you basically play with the Drifter and going in and out of the Underground like the main mission of the quest. You have no other side quest. I think you just speedrun the missions itself. You have the Duviri experience. Here you actually have the mission, the same mission, but you can go around exploring. There's a lot of puzzles that you can do. There's checkers that you can play. There's enigmas that you want to solve because the new bow, I think it's Yath it's called, drops there. The parts for it drop there, so you want to do that. You can also play instrument, the Schwanzi, so you can get more intrinsics out of that. And of course you can kill enemies to open chests, to solve riddles to open chests itself. That's the main thing about the Duviri experience. Here you can get a lot of resources and a lot of intrinsics, especially if you're playing with a squad of 4 players, 4 Tenno. It's really easy to get like 200 in a couple of hours, or even in, I think the one time I played like almost 1 hour and I got out of there with 200 and something intrinsics. So it's really good, especially people that already know how to do all the puzzles and know where to find the things, and also to get resources, because you need the resources to build the new weapons and the incarnations that lie in the circuit. Now the circuit is the last one, where you just play with your Warframe. The good thing about this is that in the circuit you just play with your Warframe. It's an endless mission where enemies start really high if you're playing a Steel Path, and on Steel Path you get incarnations for your weapons. They're not big weapons, they're low tier weapons, but with incarnations they can get up really high, and if you know how to properly mod them, it can be really powerful. And this is the Steel Path run. And the normal run, if you're just starting at the game, it's also pretty good, because you can get parts for Warframes, you know, instead of going out and farming the Warframe, which actually I've tried both methods, and I kind of feel that once you have a good build you can actually just try and fight the bosses or the missions to get the parts. It's actually faster to get the Warframe than like this, but it is another method. If you're not if you don't want to go into the star chart already, if you just entered the game, you can do this pass, this kind of battle pass, and get the Warframe that you want. Now in the circuit, the enemy level can go really high. The highest we got was playing with a team for like almost an hour, like 45 minutes to an hour, and we got to, I cannot really be precise about the stage, but the enemy was level 1900, which was really high. But 1900, you know, you can get one shot just by stopping. If you stop moving just for a little fraction of a second, you can get one shot pretty easily. So you need to really have a good build to take to this level. This is also important because this is the only level where you can get rune marrows, and rune marrows are scattered around the scenario, which is kind of small, and you have to jump around and try and find it. Maybe if your friend finds it, you can waypoint it, because it's the only place where you can get rune marrows, and rune marrows are important for incarnations and to build the new weapons. The bad thing about the circuit, and really about the entire experience that we have in Duviri, is the loading times. You have only a certain time to choose your loadouts before you enter the mission itself. This works on all 3. Before you go into the Duviri itself, the mission itself, you are in the Tension Cave, and you can select what Warframe and what weapons you want to take, and even load up with in intrinsics if you want to. The problem is, you know, some people are in a hurry, some people are already waiting too long, and they enter the mission and you get a random loadout, and if somebody leaves the mission, which has happened to me, somebody left the mission, it was a host migration, and we lost the entire progress. Almost up till now I lost about 2.5 hours in the circuit because of this. Because, you know, we're doing the mission, then a loading screen happens, or maybe someone leaves, or some connection gets lost, and we lose all our progress. This is of course being fixed, like all the bugs that the Duviri has right now. The Duviri has a lot of bugs, especially visual bugs. but it is annoying to play the game and then see all your time spent on it just being wasted. Another tip I can give you is before going into these new missions, read the tips on the bottom right corner, especially for the circuit, because the circuit is capped for each stage. Now, you do get more circuit points with each stage, but it caps at stage 5. After stage 5, that increase will not happen anymore. It is capped, so you will keep receiving the same amount of circuit points till the end. After you complete the circuit, after you complete the pass, there's still more circuit to have. The level is really high. It's like 1400 for the next level after you get the last incarnation. But if you want to do it, you can. There's arcanes that drop there. There are guaranteed drops if you get to that level. I'm not really into arcanes anymore. There's too many and too few are actually good. But if you are one of those players that want to be hardcore and want to get everything in the game, especially these new ones, this is how you get them. It's just really grinding to do so. Now, about the other two modes where you actually play with the Drifter, whether it be the Lone Story or the Duviri Experience. Playing with the Drifter is not good. I've played a lot of beat-em-ups in my time as a gamer, and this does not feel polished. I know this is kind of a test run for what they're going to present in Soulframe. Digital Extremes is as their beta, if I can call it that. But right now it's not good. One of the first issues is the lock-on. The lock-on system is very necessary when you're playing melee, because you swing with the sword, and if the enemy moves to the left or right, you miss it, and then you have to turn the entire in Warframe you have to turn the entire character and camera to make a contact again. Here the lock-on works in following the target. The problem is sometimes the camera gets stuck in positions that are not good for this. Maybe it gets stuck on a tree, or maybe behind the character, or maybe too low, and then you want to change the position of the camera, you have to move the camera itself. But by moving the camera, you also move where the lock-on of the camera is. So if you have 3 enemies, you can switch from one to the other, which is a problem that many beat-em-ups have, and I don't like it. The movement of the camera needs to be dissociated from the lock-on itself, so you can focus on an enemy, adjust the camera if need be, and not being, dealing with this obstruction or switching to another enemy. Because what happens is sometimes it switches to an enemy that's on the other side or even farther away, and you don't want that to happen. Also, the camera moves too much with the exact movement of the enemy. Now, you want to leave the camera to have a little bit of leeway. When the enemy moves a little bit to the left or the right, or if he jumps back, the camera remains stationary. It doesn't move immediately as it's locked on with the enemy. This is important because if this happens, every time you're playing, the camera is always moving, because the enemy is always moving and you're moving against it. So you have this feeling of, like I said, of jankiness or of camera shake all the time, and you don't want that. You want the lock-on to be on the enemy. You move, or the enemy moves, and the camera smoothly follows the enemy with you in the shot. Not this grabbing of the enemy where the enemy maybe jumps back, or maybe jumps to a certain obstacle, or maybe falls down, and the camera follows immediately, and you feel this, this kind of earthquake effect on camera. Another thing is actually fighting with the Drifter. Now, his movement doesn't seem like very smooth. His animation doesn't seem very smooth. It's all 1-2, 1-2. It almost looks like 2-frame animation, and you kind of miss some shots because the enemy is like that much to the left or to the right, or maybe your swing wasn't good enough. And if he jumps back, which is another problem because that's all he does, you cannot close a distance anytime. You don't have any move like a dash with Excalibur dash to close that gap. You need actually to run. Maybe you can slide, but then you have to run and slide. So it's not easy to close the gap between enemies if you want to switch from one enemy to the other. And also to parry, which is one of the main things that the game has. It doesn't have cancel animation, which means if you're hitting the adversary and you see that it's about to swing at you, you want to parry it right away. But if you're in the middle of a swing with a sword, it will not parry. It doesn't have what it's called as cancel animation, which is the animation of the swing gets cancelled and you can deflect the hit. It doesn't have anything like that. So you have to stop hitting, just have the characters stationary, and then you can parry. And if you do a good parry, it will stagger, and then you can do a finisher or an attack. So there's also that problem. To add to all this, the actual movement of the drifter is very bad. One of the things that I've noticed, and I was comparing the both, is that Carl actually seems to move a lot better than the drifter. The drifter, Carl has a little dash and he can jump through obstacles. The drifter has a slide, if you can make it work while he's running, but he doesn't climb. At least not in a lot of areas. If there's an obstacle that's like taller than him, if it's like half his height, or maybe to his neck, maybe he can hover over it. But if it's higher than that, you need the horse, or you need to go all the way around to get where you want to go, which is really bad. I really think that he should have some kind of, well, the slingshot would be good. If he had the slingshot, it would be much better than just running around here. Maybe if they could put a parkour like we have with Warframes, that would be great. If it doesn't have that, then the sling will actually improve, because Duviri has a lot of geometry in the topography. So when you're fighting, you may, be caught in a river, caught in a trench, and then you want to get to the enemy, and you have to call the horse, go up to the enemy again, get out of the horse, fight again, and it's just complicated to use. It needs to have more movement, climbing, slingshot, parkour, something that makes him more agile in Duviri, more in par with what we have already in Warframe, so we can fight better with it. And of course, speaking of the horse, Kai, his movement is terrible. Up to now, I played the instruction when I was playing the quest, and it said that L1 was to make him spin to the left or to the right. Whenever I use that, every time I use that, he just falls down in a vertical line. He just falls down every time. I have to take it down again, and then I have to put L1 again. So if I want to get to the worm, getting to the worm is an absolute nightmare. I cannot dodge those balls, because those orbs have a kind of a lock on. You may dodge them a little bit, but they still go after you. And even if you do go down with a horse in a straight line, I have no idea why. I don't know. I'm assuming this is a bug. Can't be a feature of the game. You try to avoid an obstacle and you go down vertically, which makes no sense. You get a hit on the horse a lot. Then you have to call the horse again. Then you make him fly again. So it's really complicated. Another thing that makes it complicated is the kite. Kite does not hover. It's not like an Arcwing. It's not easy to use like an Arcwing. It's not fast to use as an Arcwing. You press allegedly L3 to make him go faster, and he doesn't. I see that others can make him go faster right now. Maybe it's something I have to unlock in the intrinsics. Maybe it's that. But even so, movement is very, very complicated while riding the horse. I didn't expect to be this complicated, because I've played other games where you ride and it was simple, and not this one. This one is very, very janky, and because it doesn't hover, if you want to change direction, or maybe you want to lock on a certain thing, because there are a few puzzles and enigmas that you have to solve in an area where the objects are hovering over nothing, so you cannot be there stationary. You can be either drift over the horse, so you want to take the horse and do that, but the horse just doesn't stop moving, and because it doesn't stop moving, making these puzzles is absolutely impossible. So I don't do them. So yeah, I think they need to look at the kite movement, because right now it is very, very janky. In my opinion, one of the solutions to the kite will be actually to put blink paths like we have in Deimos and Fortuna and Incitus, to have us teleport around the map a lot easier than actually using this horse. But that's just my opinion.
There you go. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff.
Then you have the puzzles and the activities that could do Duviri itself. For instance, playing the Swansea, it has a normal mode and it has a expert mode. The normal mode itself is really complicated to play with a controller. At least to me, it's not easy to press the L's and the R's and the buttons at the same time. So you really need to do that thing over and over again before you actually do it. So yeah, it's complicated to do that. The puzzles are really, really interesting. The puzzles are interesting. The little checkers game is also interesting, especially if you know a little trick to win easily with that. So that's really cool. Another thing that I think it's really, really bad in terms of mechanics, it's the Ravenous Maw. Now the Ravenous Maw, basically you swim with it and you have two buttons to catch the fish. One is a short range and another is kind of a dash. The dash is absolutely terrible to use because there's a lot of obstacles on the underground, so you can't really get all those fishes in line again. And the small one, man, it has really, really, really small area of effect. I mean, you can press it right next to the fish and it will catch absolutely nothing. I mean, this is very complicated to use. I mean, I don't think you really... Maybe by using a mouse it's easier. And let me just say this. I think many of the things that they programmed in Duviri was programmed to use with a mouse. I know that Rebecca, the creative director, uses the controller a lot, but everything feels like he uses her mouse, including the puzzles where you have small parts in the orbs that you can shoot. So it's really complicated to use with a controller. At least that's been my experience all of through this. Then, of course, after all these mechanics, there's bugs. There's lots of bugs, especially in the last part of the mission where you fly with a Hornwind. I know there's visual. I constantly have visual bugs in the last stage because the Whirlwind, you know, sets fire or sets electric damage to the stage, and everything's just flashing around. If you try to hit the little rings around it, the rings are also flashing because they are full of electricity, or maybe when you hit them. I mean, then you have the enemies. I mean, everything is just complicated to visualize. At this point, I'm playing on PlayStation 4. It's an old PlayStation 4. It's not even the Pro. So at this point, I have everything of effects and glooms and everything shut down. Everything is turned down, so I can just play the game. If those things were actually turned on, at this point, I would have, you know, a massive drop in frame rate. Not to mention that I wouldn't be able to see what the hell I was doing. So they really should address the visual aspect of the game, because right now, I mean, maybe if you were like Rebecca and play in a super wide screen and you can put everything crisp and you can put everything on your PC as you want it, maybe there. But right now, the experience that I'm having on an old console, let's say like that, is not great. At least not visually great. It's not visually readable, and the Duviri has a lot of times this problem. Also, and of course, whenever you do the Undercroft, especially when you're going to the last mission or the other missions, you know, while it's loading, you may lose a partner, you may lose some kind of information, you may go into host progression and just lose the entire game. It's something that's been happening a lot, especially on the last mission when you after you fight the Hornwind. The game just crashes and you see absolutely nothing. It's a visual bug that allows you to see absolutely nothing. All you see is sky, and then somebody, usually the host, goes to extraction, and then we can all get out. Maybe. Most times people just do, you know, bail out of Duviri, which has a failsafe per se, which is if you leave Duviri after getting your decree, everything up to that decree is saved. That's a little silver lining. It's a workaround that they used, and I'm glad they did, because it's not been the first time that I've, you know, completed the mission with a squad and then I just have to leave just to save my progress. So overall, the Duviri quest was great. Playing Duviri, not so much. It's still very buggy, but I know the bugs will be ironed out over time. But some of the mechanics are janky or even messy, especially, you know, flying with a horse or fighting with a drifter. It can be very hectic, especially if you're trying to do it in Steel Pass level, which I did try, but I just gave up because I couldn't handle it. So yeah, if you're playing for Duviri, I mean, if you're grinding for the things in the circuit, it's fine. It's better than what it was, and it's, you know, basically Warframe as is. But if you're trying to make Duviri, you know, the grind and all that, unless you're doing it solo, and solo, it's not as fun, you know. It takes a long time. It's not as fun. It's kind of boring, but it's the best decision that you can make if you want to get those pathos or maybe the resources. It's better than do that than to have, you know, everything just get all janky and losing products. So that's the video. Write down in the comment section what you think about the video, if you're having problems with it or not, if you're playing console or in PC, and let's all hope for the best in the future. Until then, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. As always, have a great game, guys.